So we have had a crazy, silly season in Formula One. Uh, Not just in Formula One, but across the motorsport world, you could say. Not only have drivers moved around, but so have team principals and very high, high up technical staff and other management people.
Yep.
So it's been a crazy one. But one thing that has always stood out to me in relation to this particular driver is why, like, just asking what makes him so desirable.
Yeah.
And leading on to that, our question today is, and it's gonna hurt you a little bit, Vedant. It's gonna hurt you a little bit. But our question today is, what makes Fernando Alonso so desirable, especially in F1?
Yep.
And the reason I ask that question is, if you look back to Fernando's career, right? Let's say after he won his two championships, he's had a great, like, he's a great driver, and he's probably, you could argue, the closest to his peak anyone has been for such a long period of time, right? But he hasn't had a very good relationship with, let's say, the team management or the entire team itself. Like, he hasn't been able to do, let's say, what Michael Schumacher did, or Lewis Hamilton did, which is build a
Yep.
team around him. Now, we've heard stories from the likes of Mark Priestley as how Fernando would, try to get the team on his side by paying them off, or, just things like that. But other than that, just from a character and a human, person point of view, he hasn't really been able to do it in such a way that even the other driver, like, it creates a calm environment. It grows a calm environment in the team. He's always managed to, really piss off his teammate, his other driver in the team, and things have unraveled. And he's been in the middle of
Yeah.
multiple scandals, let's say. And even then, teams continue to go after him, knowing who he is as a person, as a character, and he hasn't been very kind to teams, and he hasn't, he's committed teams that are nowhere near the top of the order, and he's asked too much of them, and then hasn't been very unkind, you could say, to them in the way he has approached his feedback and his impatience with the development plan of the team itself. We saw that most recently with, obviously, the Honda debacle, when he was at McLaren, and he was quite
Yep. Yep.
discontent with what was going on at Alpine too. So you tell me, being a Fernando Alonso fan, what makes him so desirable? And on the same note, what makes
Yeah. Well,
people a
that's
fan
a
of
very
him?
interesting question. But I mean, I'll just say this right off. I'll be the first one to accept that Fernando is a very divisive character in the paddock and a very paradoxical character, so to say, for a team to recruit, as you have put it, right? But I mean, obviously, the experience he brings in is probably the most important thing a team like Aston Martin or Alpine looked in him, right? I mean, I'm talking about these two because these are his latter part of the career, and he has come back into Formula One after 2 seasons away, right? So, in terms of that, I guess the experience he brings in, or the feedback that he can potentially provide, because I mean, if you look at it, the place that Alpine were in, or the place that Aston Martin are in, it's all about taking a midfield car up front. So I guess I mean, that is the sort of thought process in this scenario. The the Ferrari years or the McLaren years were different because he was actually at his peak, and those were teams on the top looking to just get that title. I mean, McLaren didn't know what they were signing up for, but Ferrari knew, right? Ferrari knew that they have a sort of competitive package for so many years, and they just need someone to fight for that title. So yeah, I don't know, but I guess and again, for the midfield teams, I guess the way he sort of outperforms the car, like Fernando Alonso outperforms the car is the general consensus in. I don't know if it's in the paddock, but it's in the fan base at least, right? So maybe that brings in a lot of backing for him, I guess.
So, what as a fan makes him so desirable? Why are you a fan of him? Why are so many people a fan of him? Because I mean, even when we talk about the likes of Michael Schumacher, the one
Yep.
thing that stands out is what he did with Damon Hill to win that championship, and it's a hard pill to swallow for Michael Schumacher fans. But Fernando Alonso, he might not have done something like that, but he's done plenty of things to his rival drivers and other teammates and whatnot, and he's
Yep.
been
Yep.
quite
Yep.
unbearable to a lot of teams. So what about him makes him so almost likable in a way? Is it his evil
Yeah, I guess
genius?
so. I
Is
guess
it
so.
his
The way you
what
put
is it?
it, the evil genius, or I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Because
Just like an
the way he
anti-hero
goes about
character?
it is do or die sort of thing. He wants that result no matter what. No matter what. We saw that especially like we weren't following it at the time, but we have read about it. The original McLaren years with the McLaren year, sorry, with Lewis Hamilton. The Hungary qualifying was it, where he stayed in the pit just a couple of seconds longer, and Lewis Hamilton was not able to put in his final lap, right? So, I mean, that was a tactical play against your teammate, sort of. And we haven't seen him do anything like that in the second McLaren years or Alpine, and yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
there was
and
no
his
reason
like
for him to do that because the car was
yeah,
just not
and
there. He
his
was not competing
teammates
technically.
were Jensen Button did beat him in the first season, but his teammates were like Stoffel Van Dorn was nowhere near him, right? But
Stoffel
we
Van Dorn.
saw
Yeah.
similar things at Ferrari, I guess, with Felipe Massa, because there was team play involved in that, team orders involved in that. So I don't know, like things must have happened there, right? But yeah, I guess the his mentality for it, even at McLaren, even in the lower, like he knew the car was not good. He was still trying it. If you remember Baku, I think it was 2018 or 2019 was it, where 2018, right, where he brought the car back after the first lap incident. The car was completely broken. He brought it back on two wheels basically. So I guess it's things like that, the never die attitude or whatever you want to call it. Yeah,
No, yeah,
absolutely.
definitely.
Yep,
I'm
yep,
not,
yep, yep.
questioning his street cred to say. I'm just asking what makes him so desirable, given like the negatives that he brings along with him, being the brilliant driver that he is. But besides that, everything because we know from what we've seen, like just being a great driver is not enough to win the championship. It's not enough to take the team to the championship. You have to
For
build
you,
the team
yep.
around you, or you have to have someone build the team around you for you. Maybe that may be the case in. I'm not saying that is the case, but maybe that is the case for Max
I mean,
Verstappen.
it
Maybe.
it was the case
But
for
we saw what
Fernando
Michael Schumacher
during
did. We've seen
his
that.
original Renault years, right, with Flavio.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. We've seen what Lewis has done. Even when Nico was there, when Valtteri was there, and even now, even though George Russell is there, it is still very much Lewis's team with what he's done over the years. So, I mean, at the most basic level, even if you're signing Fernando Alonso, you're also signing up for at least
Yeah.
1 year of bad PR. So, it just brings into the question is why, on like a more holistic level, why are team principals still looking to sign this person? And the reason I ask that is because any other employee, that joins the team, usually in any company, you have to go through at least 3 interviews, right? And the very first one is what is called, it's done by the HR and it's called the behavioral interview
Yep.
usually, where they assess who you are as a person. and how you will be a part of the team and whether or not you're a decent match. And that theme carries along with your interview with the hiring manager, who's the technical person, and then with the team that you'll be working with when you interview with them. So Fernando Alonso clearly would not pass those interviews, if you ask me. If you ask me, Fernando Alonso will not proceed to round two of his job interviews. So to me, it still feels like if let's say if I were a team principal of a midfield team looking to move higher up, I feel there are other candidates in in the F1 pool who might be a better choice than the short term, let's say, success that Fernando Alonso might bring in if we were to not deliver on his expectations, let's say. Because yes, let's talk about like the current case. Let's not talk so much in general, but let's talk about the current scenario where Lawrence Stroll wants to win the world championship in 5 years, of which already one is over, and it doesn't seem they are on the pathway to win a world championship or contend for it even in the next 5 years, right? At least from what we can see now. Now he has signed someone like Fernando Alonso, who believes that they can be there in, let's say, by the end of his first contract. So 2 years, 3 years, whatever that is. Why? Because clearly, as soon as the needle is behind, the development needle is behind Fernando Alonso's expectations,
and I mean,
things are gonna start.
That was why I was so surprised when Fernando signed for Alpine in 2021, because everyone knew where Alpine were, and they weren't progressing anywhere, right? And Fernando knew what a midfield team can do to him, sort of. Being in McLaren, like you can't do anything. You can compete for P5, and by chance, it's all down to luck. You can get a podium, right? So I was surprised with that move, and we saw it this season. 2021 was all honeymoony for Fernando and Alpine, but this season, even before the departure announcement came in, his battle with Esteban Ocon heated up a bit, and his but still, 2021 and 22 were two completely different years in a way for Alpine, and with Alpine's philosophy for this new car, where they targeted performance rather than reliability in a way, it obviously hurt Fernando, and he obviously blamed Alpine for that and all that. But I guess for Aston Martin, again, Lawrence Stroll signed Seb for the experience and the talent that he brings, and Fernando also for this talent and experience that he brings. My counter, just as a Fernando fan, to your take that he brings in PR, is that the limelight that he brings in, could it be that the limelight that he brings in potentially outweighs the bad PR? Because if Fernando Alonso is in your car, you will be in the spotlight throughout the season, almost always, right? And I mean, I don't know how all that works, but could it outweigh the bad PR?
But here's my question. They could not extract. Seb is known to be one of the most technical drivers on the grid. He knows the car more than anyone else, probably. He's very well versed with the engineering side of it. And they could not extract enough out of Seb to make real progress on that car. Yes, they've moved up a little bit, it seems, especially on some tracks. Their performance is just, crazy compared to their average performance throughout the year. But what is to say that a team that could not extract the most out of Seb will be able to do so with Fernando? When Seb is probably the most supportive personality on the grid for a team. And additionally, the Aston Martin facility and wind tunnel, I believe, will not be completed until mid next year, or at least the end of this year. So they won't be able to reap the benefits of the new facility and the wind tunnel and everything for at least another 2 years.
See,
so that is basically when Fernando's contract will be ending, and he won't be around to let's say reap the benefits of
Yeah.
Aston
See,
Martin's
at the end of the
you
day,
know commitment to F1 and developing their team.
there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee that this partnership, Fernando and Aston Martin,
Because
will pay off in 1 year, in 2 years, or in 3 years, whatever it may be. I think from Lawrence Stroll's point of view, it was a different sort of recruitment, because obviously Lawrence Stroll could have gone for anyone, right? Daniel Ricciardo was out of contract around that time as well, and anyone basically, like whatever, whoever were out of contract basically. But going for Fernando was that particular contract, and that particular recruitment was more based on his star power. I agree to that. Yeah.
I mean, Lawrence Stroll's and Fernando
Yeah.
Alonso's personalities match more
Yeah,
than otherwise.
maybe
I
Lawrence
mean, if,
can
if
be.
you're talking about an
Sorry,
evil,
maybe
you know,
Lawrence can be the new
character,
Flavio
an evil genius
Briatore of
character, I
Formula
think Lawrence Stroll and Fernando Alonso will get. I mean, technically, if you look back at what happened with Flavio, he never, you know, admitted his.
Yeah.
Like he always remained innocent in what happened, and he's not allowed in the paddock anymore. So if that were to happen with Lawrence
Yeah.
Stroll, I don't think it's gonna go down well for Fernando Alonso, because I
but-
don't think
but I mean,
Lawrence Stroll is gonna
Flavio
go
was
down
the
without
only
a
one
fight.
who could manage Fernando,
Uh.
and they are still best friends in a way. They still hang out and post photos on Instagram every now and then, right? So yeah, who knows what Lawrence Stroll can be? Yeah.
Yeah, because the other question also is, you know, like it's not like Fernando Alonso is going to be recruited by the
Oh,
top
no.
three teams in F1. I don't think Ferrari is going back to
No
Fernando.
chance.
I don't think Red Bull will ever want Fernando, and especially I don't think Toto will ever recruit Fernando. So clearly, those three teams, Ferrari might be an outlier, but you know, Fernando's technically driven with Lewis, so you know there might be some
Yep.
backstory there. But Fernando doesn't directly have history with the new Mercedes F1 team. Let's say they were still the engine suppliers, but the new Mercedes F1 team, and he doesn't have a history with Red Bull. And still, even though Red Bull have had a crisis of drivers who can perform and you know deliver, they haven't gone to Fernando. They haven't looked at Fernando. So I think that goes to show that,
Yeah.
I mean, there isn't a place on the grid for Fernando with a world championship winning team anytime soon. And yes, there are, you know, things in place that FIA has put, F1 has put for convergence of performance, but that's not going to happen after 1 year of new regulations. That's going to happen 4, 5, 6 years after the new regulations have kicked in, right? So, I mean, again, I'm just trying to reiterate or you know bring out other
I
points
remember
around the question
when
that I pose, and that is what
Fernando's
makes Fernando
deal
Alonso
with
so
Aston
desirable at
Martin
the moment.
was announced, and I may be wrong, like, but I read an article titled along the lines of that this is a marriage of convenience. I may be wrong, but it seemed to me that it really is the Aston Martin story. But yeah, I guess in general it's, you know, just his, I don't know, his you've put me in a very, very strange spot, because yeah, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, his personality aside, the things that he brings to the
And that's what I
racetrack
like to do.
is much more powerful than, I mean, it's, and at the same time, it's not much bad PR in a way from, it's just a little disruption within the team. See, that was a very, very different story.
Don't tell
because
that to Zach Brown
at that
and Honda.
point, even after Honda
Don't tell
left,
that to Zach Brown and
McLaren
Honda.
was still nowhere, even with the Renault engine, right? So that was a completely different story. But yeah, I don't know. The things that he brings to the racetrack are much more valuable,
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
to the teams than the disruption that he brings in, I guess. Oh man.
I guess. Well, we're gonna close this out on that note because it's been 20 minutes of us arguing about Fernando Alonso. So, so thank you, Vedant, for entertaining my questions and entertaining me trying to upset you a little bit. And as always, we'll join you on the next one.